On a warm winter day, I flew my old P30 with my BMK GPS installed. Flying an electric motor or a glow-powered engine, it was just too muddy, and the motor or engine would be all full of mud when it landed. So this rubber model was just light enough it didn't really sink in. So here you see the screen on my BMK Flexi display showing 14 meters of altitude. It climbed up to about 26 meters high, leveled off, and then came down. On this particular flight, I don't think I encountered any lift, but it's fun watching the altitude change in real time, and here it landed. So now I change to the location screen and start walking in the direction the arrow is pointing. I tried to walk on the grass as long as I could before going into the field, but I went just a little bit too far off this direction. So then I stop and then go back the other way. The arrow gives you a pretty good idea of the direction to head, but it's not perfect. It can move off of the direction sometimes, but the countdown of the distance seems pretty accurate within a certain percent of error. So I get to a point where the distance starts increasing again, and then I turn around and go back sort of the same way, but kind of off in another direction. And I quickly found the airplane. Finding that plane in this field is really tough. So after making a few flights, I was going to quit and put it away, but I thought, wow, what a nice day, 50 degrees and really low winds, so I thought I'd do one more flight. Well, it was kind of like light and variable wind that was switching directions, and once you know it, it heads right for the farm there with those buildings and the trees. I think the air switched direction, but also I feel like there must have been a thermal down there pulling it in, because it went almost straight for a while and then it started circling just as it got over these buildings and these trees. Looking at the real-time altitude, I could tell that it had not landed on the ground because the altitude stopped about 10 meters up. And the GPS directed me towards the tree where the airplane was. So I found this old apple picking pole, which was really heavy, made out of galvanized pipe, and I wired on a little branch to try to extend it, but it just wasn't long enough to reach the plane, and it was just too heavy to try to handle. And you know, I had left my pole at home, and going back, it's 20 miles, so I'd have to go back 20 miles, then 20 miles back, and then another 20 miles back. And I was invited for a Thanksgiving celebration. So for like an hour, I threw things at it. I threw sticks and rotten apples and snowballs, and I dislodged it a couple of times, but with that pop-off wing and a string wrapped around a branch, I just couldn't get it to come down. Just before I went to leave, the wind started to gust, and I thought maybe it'd come down, but it didn't. So I had to give up and come back the next day. So I'm driving into this little town. The farm is just outside of there, and I see that it's showing it's like 2,034 meters away. Now, it wasn't picking up a signal, but it remembers the last position, and it directed me to that. I think this is one big advantage of the GPS system over a RF system like a Walston, in that it remembers that last location. So I duct taped a hook on the end of my pole, which is a windsock pole. I think it's 27 feet long. And I tried to get it up towards the plane, and it was wiggling around quite a bit. It had been really windy overnight, and it was really wrapped up. But I managed to first get the wing down, although it didn't go all the way to the ground. It got stuck in the branch of another tree. and it was somewhat damaged, but it can be fixed pretty easy. And after that, I worked on getting the fuselage to come down. It damaged it a little bit in the rear of the fuselage because that's where the string was attached, but otherwise it looked pretty good. Well, it was interesting to see with the GPS unit that you can tell when your plane hasn't really landed on the ground, and it was neat to see how the last known position works.